It's Super Bowl week. We got to get right into it. I am a bit sad, I would say, because it feels to me like the quote unquote NFL is rigged for the Chiefs crowd and the quote unquote NFL is scripted for the Chiefs crowd is louder than ever. And I thought that it was just a bunch of, brain dead conspiracy theorists and whiners. But I've come to realize that millions of actual reasonable humans and NFL fans now actually think the NFL is rigged. I'm curious what you think of that, what the NFL thinks of that, or any more thoughts on this whole it's rigged for the Chiefs talk.
I would just say that I don't believe that, despite what other people think. I don't buy into that. I think every great player over time gets the benefit of the doubt. Michael Jordan got the benefit of the doubt. LeBron James gets the benefit of the doubt. Tom Brady got the benefit of the doubt. They get the benefit of the doubt because they deserve it. And it's not like calls are going certain ways. I was doing a radio show with Scott Hastings, who lives in Denver on altitude this past week, and he was telling me a story one time where he was standing by Michael Jordan, and the official walked over and said to Michael Jordan, "Don't worry, I won't let you foul out." Like, again, do I think there's anything blatant like that in the NFL? No. Do I think that when you see a call and you see a great player, that you might side in favor of the great player? Perhaps psychologically there's something to that, but I don't think it's rigged. I don't think it's scripted. I don't buy into any of that. I buy into the fact that the Chiefs are one of the most clutch teams in history.
Well, if we admit that the Chiefs get the benefit of the doubt, if we admit that the Chiefs have gotten a favorable whistle during this run, is that good or bad for the NFL? Because I think a lot of reasonable people would say, yeah, it's not rigged, just like you said. Hey, it's not rigged, but Chiefs certainly do get a lot of the calls. And I know you had some tweets about the way the roughing the passer stuff has gone lately, et cetera.
Yeah, like that. I mean, there was zero intent behind it. I was quite surprised at the reaction to that. Like, it was just a factual statement that an ESPN researcher sent to me that I topped the story with, but whatever. Like, people, it's a sensitive subject. People get very touchy about it. People like to use that for engagement elsewhere. But there was zero intent, and it is what it is. What is there to say about it? Like,
yeah.
I mean, what do you want? They get the benefit of the doubt. They've earned the benefit of the doubt. It doesn't diminish their greatness, and that's the way it is.
Yeah. Do you think the NFL thinks this is a problem that they get the benefit of the doubt, and people are like, oh, I'm a Bills fan, I'm a Ravens fan. We don't get a fair shake in these games because the Chiefs get the benefit of the doubt. Is that good for the NFL?
You know, Adam, honestly, I think I don't know, maybe I think we're putting too much into this. Like, I think we're looking for excuses to try to detract from the Chiefs' greatness. Like, They've won 17 straight one-score games. It's not because of calls that have went their way. They're clutch. They're one of the great one-score teams, maybe the greatest one-score team in NFL history. They're doing it their way. Like, I'm not trying to diminish that in any way, shape, or form.
Okay. Let me ask this then. NFL's gotten a lot of criticism for the referees not being full-time employees. Like, in the offseason, these guys have other jobs, which strikes me as insane for a league which generates, I don't know, 20 or 30 billion in revenue a year. It also strikes me as insane that given the tech we have in tennis and all these other sports, that we have old men squinting from 15 yards away to spot the ball. We measure first downs with chains. Is there any push that you felt from within the NFL to improve the tech, to make the refs better, full-time, et cetera?
Those are topics that have continually come up, and I do think the league has looked for ways to improve. I'll just say this, like, the level of unhappiness amongst teams and coaches, that's been there for a while now. Like, there are a lot of people who are unhappy. And to me, that's on the league with all its resources to figure out how to improve it. And I'll also say this, like, as many bad calls as there are, the officials do an incredible job in real time. Like, you have no idea how hard it is. Like, how many times have you seen, like, James Cook's touchdown, right? Like, it's called touchdown on the field, I believe, at the time. And you're like, touchdown, like, and you watch it and how close that is. And they got it right. They get a lot of things right. But because there's so much scrutiny on the game and there's such a high level of interest, everything in the day and age that we live in is scrutinized. So when they miss a call or when there's a questionable call, there's going to be more conversation than ever before about it. But I agree with you. Like, the league has so much money, so many resources. Like, why would they not be full-time? Why would you not figure out a way to pay the best and the brightest so that they don't practice law and they're not doing real estate and they're not engaging in these other jobs and they are full-time referees where they're going through the week training for the games just like the players and coaches. There's a lot of time and energy that all these people put into it. And the officials, who are tremendous, honestly, like, they're really good. But it would be, I think, even better if somehow you could take them away from their jobs, make them full-time, have them train, have them review tape, have them study the upcoming opponent, everything. Like, why not? Now, again, this probably sounds very simplistic. We're probably presenting a more simplistic case than it actually is. But I will say, how can it not make sense for the NFL to spend whatever it takes to make sure that the officiating is as good as it could be?
Okay, I agree. It seems crazy to me. Let's move on to injuries. I want to go back to the beginning of this season and the Christian McCaffrey situation. I rarely feel bad for people. I have no soul, but I legit did feel bad for season-long fantasy football players. They geared up for their league all year. They put everything they have into it. They get the number one pick. They take Christian McCaffrey. And it turns out the 49ers were seemingly at least hiding how serious this tendonitis thing is. Now, I do want to tell the people, though, you take your league very seriously. And I know you had the number one pick. And I know you took Christian McCaffrey. So you were in this boat with them as well. What can you tell the people about what was happened leading up to that and injury reporting around the NFL in training camp?
I don't think they were lying or misleading in any way, shape, or form. I really don't believe that. Now, I could just say this. I did have the number one pick. And whenever I have a high pick, I'm always thinking young player, upside, something to prove, clean injury history. Like, it's all about value. You're trying to make a decision that's safe. And I think I said to you, I know I said elsewhere, I didn't trust Christian McCaffrey. Now, here's the thing. I went through it, right? I really wanted to take Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall. Like, those are the two guys I was trying to talk myself into. And Breece Hall, I'll be honest, was playing on the Jets. And I couldn't do that. I couldn't convince myself with where they were at that that's a safe investment. I wasn't there. I called the Falcons, and there's one guy I've spoken to the last 2 years. And he's like, 2 years ago, he said, that's not the way that Arthur Smith runs his offense. They don't feature one guy. Tyler Algier is going to get some. I'm like, that's not where I want to put my number one pick last year. I called the guy again this year. And he uttered a similar message. Okay, like, yeah, we love Bijan, but we're going to spread it around. This guy's going to be involved. It's not going to be. And I'm like, I really, and I'm not just saying this in hindsight, I really wanted to take Bijan. And I was so mad all year long because I felt that. I felt that was the right pick. And I never felt Christian and I took him. So let me say this. And I remember, and not blaming anybody, I spoke to somebody. I came so close to trading the pick over and over. And then I was on the phone with Field Yates, and he's like, yeah, how could you not take Christian? And by the way, I took Jordan Mason and I took Isaac Garindo, and I just locked in the backfield. That's what I did. Okay. I said, I don't trust McCaffrey, but I believe in the Niners backfield, and I drafted them all. So I had them all. Early, it was good with Mason. Later, it was pretty good with Garindo, but it was a wasted resource using the number one pick the way I did. And I just never believed it. I spoke to the Niners regularly about it. They thought he was going to be ready. By the way, I was in San Francisco for the Monday night game, and we didn't find out until 90 minutes. I'm standing with 49ers officials who were telling me they thought he was going to be active, and then he wasn't. So, I mean, the whole thing, I think, just kind of sped up at the end. They knew he had some tendonitis or Achilles in his Achilles. That was a concern, but it wasn't like they were hiding it. They thought he was going to be ready, and he just had setbacks and wasn't. And then he came back and looked pretty good, and then got hurt in the Buffalo game, and that was it.
Yeah.
So, again, my lesson was that I like guys that are safe. I like guys that have something to prove. Christian McCaffrey had just gotten paid. As great a player as he is, he had an injury history and he got paid. That's not my kind of pick ordinarily, but I made it because I bet on the Niners offensive system, not him.
Well, I do think that it was, if Christian McCaffrey was healthy, I still think it was the right pick. And I really don't have regrets about taking Christian McCaffrey #1 overall if we thought he was healthy coming into the season. But that speaks to what goes on in the preseason, which is teams are not required to file any type of injury report before the season. They're not required to tell us. Adam is doing his best to find out, but they're not required to tell us anything leading up to fantasy football drafts. That's different than regular season when they list it. Yeah.
I spoke to the organization regularly, and when I'm making my pick, I check into these picks, okay? There was nothing specifically speaking to the most important people in the organization that told me you can't make this pick, okay?
Okay. That's different than the regular season when teams are required to reveal if a guy is hurt. Now, we had a couple situations this year where guys are not listed questionable. There's no more probable tag. They're not listed questionable, so they're going to play in the game. We know that, but they might be less than 100%. Given the state of legalized gambling, of how popular fantasy football is, should the teams be forced to bring back the probable tag? Should they be forced to list a guy questionable if he's going to play, but he's less than 100%? You have any take on that? Because I know you spend so much of the time during the season trying to find out exactly how healthy these guys are.
And you know how careful I am on these injury reports because, again, I can distinctly remember one time. I don't think I'm saying anything out of school here. Like there was a head coach. There was a big running back injury. Guy told me he's playing or not playing. Hey, coach, not playing. And we're doing the pregame show. We report in the morning, not expected to play. And I get a call like at 12:50, 10 minutes before Sunday countdown's off the air. It's the head coach. He was just out on the field. He came in, he called me, and he's like, hey, guy went out in pregame warm-ups, feels good, he's going to go. I'm like, oh, God damn. Like, this is what happens.
Yeah.
You know, and that's always the trepidation on all these injury reports. Like, when you and I discuss some injuries sometimes, I'm always like, I think, I believe, I sense, but you never really know, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's the danger in these things.
Should we bring back the probable tag? Should the NFL bring back the probable tag?
I am in favor of doing everything possible to give people as much information as possible, being that they want people to disclose injury information, right? Yeah. It should be out there. The more we know, the better it is. I'm all for information. So whatever distinctions we can make to give us even more information to make the best educated decisions on whether we should or shouldn't play a guy in our fantasy lineups in DFS, whatever it may be, like I'm all for that. So you're preaching to the choir, turn around and face the congregation.
Yes. Roger Goodell, who I know listens to this show regularly, you heard it from Adam Schefter, bring back the probable tag. Okay. I want to talk about the story of the 2024 fantasy season, which was kind of the return of running back dominance. I think some of that was outlier, right? The top running backs stayed healthy at an outlier rate. Wide receivers, the top wide receivers got hurt at an outlier rate. But we can't deny that we saw a ton of teams shift back to run-centric approaches. Do you get the sense that this is a one-year trend in the NFL, one-year outlier where everybody started to be, not everybody, but a lot of teams started to be more run-heavy? Or do you think this is something sticky where teams are going to start spending more draft capital at running back, more free agent dollars at running back, et cetera?
Before I go into answering this, I want to point out to you to validate my gut. I'm in 2 football leagues. I'm in an ESPN league where I had the #1 pick and I took Christian McCaffrey. And I'm in another league with 2 of my buddies that live in my town. And we had the 6th overall pick, which is what I was thinking of trading back for the guys that I wanted. And it's easy for me to say it now, but you could ask I wanted Jahmyr Gibbs or Saquon Barkley. Those are the 2 guys I wanted. And I should have just been like, well, I'm taking them at 1 in ESPN over Bijan. But like everybody's preseason polls, you fall victim to that, where Christian McCaffrey, Bijan, and Breece Hall. Those are the top 3 guys, right?
Yeah.
So in our other league, we went back and forth. We had the 6th pick, and they're like, "Oh, we need to take Jamar Chase, or who was a great pick this year, or we need to take CD Lamb, or we need to take this guy." And I'm like, "Guys, we're taking." I initially started on Gibbs. I'm like, I love Jahmyr Gibbs, but he does split with Montgomery, so you can't really do that at 6. And then Barkley, I'm like, and this is exactly what I'm talking about. He had the injury history, but he had something to prove this year. He was in a new offense. He was behind a new offensive line. And on the day of the draft, I called him. I'm like, I'm feeling Saquon Barkley. We're going Barkley at 6, which Barkley at 6 was a bit rich.
Oh,
It
yeah.
was a bit ahead of projections, and we took him.
Yeah.
We took him in my other league at 6. And he had a great year. By the way, there were certain weeks where it was disappointing because Jalen Hurts would steal his touchdowns and Saquon Barkley would have 7, 8 fantasy points. And you're like, damn, you played much better than that. And we got screwed out of our touchdowns. But that was what I felt. Now, what I'm going to feel this upcoming season, to answer your question about whether we've returned to the running back, my guess right now is that I'll probably zig back to the wide receivers because I think everybody's going to come over to the running back and the value of the running back, and that's going to be boosted.
Yeah.
And so inevitably there'll be somebody that slides back, and I'd rather be interested in that guy.
Yeah, I'm curious from an NFL team perspective. I know you talk to so many teams and personnel guys. Do they think that running the ball is more important, or returning to running the ball as a focus of offenses is the preferred way now? Whereas a few years ago was really, or even 2 years ago, was really starting to turn where so many offenses were throwing the ball at a way over expected rate.
Yeah, but don't you think that, I mean, running has always been there.
Yeah.
Like it's not like it's new. It's just that this year there were certain guys that became bell cow kind of guys that were in the spotlight, whether it was Saquon or on a new team, or Derrick Henry on a new team, or Josh Jacobs on a new team. Like there were a lot of guys on a new team. So all of a sudden our eyes were open to something that's been going on anyway.
Yeah.
Like it was happening. There were running backs that were dominating their team's carries, being productive in a fantasy world. It was always there, but I think it screamed out this year. Oh, look at the running backs. Look what they're doing. I mean, I don't have the empirical data that you do and go over like all the stats, but like this isn't the first time that running backs have had big years in the NFL.
Certainly not the first time, but it was an outlier in terms of running back versus wide receiver scoring. And I do think injuries had a big thing to do with that. I mean, Saquon, Josh Jacobs, Derrick Henry, those guys never got hurt.
I'd flip it around and say, I've always been a big wide receiver early guy, always. And it felt like if you did that this year, with the exception of maybe Jamar Chase, that kind of blew up on you.
Oh, and the meta kind of changed, I think, too, where to your point about value, wide receivers were going higher than ever this year, and they failed at a higher rate than ever this year. Okay.
And my guess is that it'll probably shift back. Like there'll probably be value in the wide receiver next year or the year after.
Yeah.
And when the value of the running back is being shifted up, I like to try to go the other way if I can.
Yes, a contrarian player. We love it. Okay. I want to ask about the NIL situation in college. There are now players, plenty of them, who will make more money getting paid by Penn State, shout out to me, or Michigan, shout out to you. They'll make more money on NIL deals with schools like that than they will going to the NFL.
Right.
Does the NFL see that as a problem, do you think, or what is the NFL kind of tone around NIL in college?
I don't think that's a problem. I think actually it helps the NFL because the NFL would like these guys to stay in school and be ready when they come out. So what is the NFL missing out? There's always going to be a rookie class. There's going to be 265 or whatever it is draft picks, whether certain guys stay or certain guys go. So it doesn't impact the NFL in any way. In other words, I think the league would rather it be that way, where these guys are completing their education, making more money, and gaining more and more experience to where when they enter the NFL, they're more of a professional. Now, I think the character of the guy today entering the NFL, like I remember when I was in Denver, I started covering the Broncos in 1990, way back when. I remember when I stopped covering them in 2004, I felt like there was a shift in guys. And maybe that was real, maybe that wasn't. But I certainly felt like the guys were more me-centric towards the end than they were when I first got there. And I was dealing with some guys. Like I'm dealing with guys that were such quality guys. And at the end, not to say they weren't, but there was a difference in guys. And I think that difference is even more accentuated. And it's more accentuated because everybody's got their brand, their social media posts. They're making more money than ever before. Mm-hmm. So the mindset of the professional football player today, as he enters the NFL, that guy is built and wired differently, I think, than the guy that entered the league 20 years ago without making money in college, without being on social media, without some of these situations around him. And so it's just different. The NFL I don't think it has a strong feeling one way or another, other than the fact they'd like guys to be ready when they get to the league. And in some ways, they are more than ever now.
Yeah. Well, they're certainly, treated like professional players more now in college than they ever were. And I know people for a long time were like, we need a minor league football system. We need a minor league football system. NIL and college strikes me as serving that purpose pretty well, to your point.
Yeah. It becomes colleges always were a minor league, and now it's a lucrative minor league where it makes sense for even more people to stay there longer.
Exactly.
And get more mature.
All right. I'm sorry. I got to ask you about the clip that went viral from your appearance on Kevin Clark's podcast. I think people think you're a robot. They think you're not human. So when you told the story about interrupting an intimate moment with a woman to break a story,
but I didn't interrupt the moment. It was at the end. I didn't interrupt anything.
Okay. We're clearing the air. Regardless, I think it shocked people in some way because, again, I think they think you're some kind of bot or robot. They don't think of you as a human, right? So the clip goes mega, mega, mega viral of this. Do you have any regrets about going public with that story? And I love the story, obviously. But do you have any regrets about going public with that story on Kevin Clark's podcast?
I never expected that it would go viral the way that it did. And it was funny because that morning somebody texted me, they're like, oh, I wonder what your wife is going to think of this. I'm like, she's not even on social media. She's not going to see it. And within an hour, I got a text, yo, asshole, what is this? So it is what it is. Like I said, to me, it was a human moment. You know, we're just showing, like, I was on a date. By the way, this is 25 years ago, more than 26 years ago. Guess what? At one point in my life, I was in my early 30s. I was single. I was living the bachelor life in Denver. And so what did I do? I wasn't married.
I think we might have lost Adam's audio there for a second.
And they're sorry about that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. So I don't know if you lost the audio, you could edit, whatever. But I mean, like, I'm living a single guy's life in my early 30s. I told a story about it.
One thing that I think it highlighted on a more serious note is like what this job that you and like a very few other people do, where you are literally on call 24/7. Adrian Wojnarowski decided to remove himself or retire from the job, took like a 99% pay cut to go be the GM of his alma mater's college basketball program. I think people always wonder, like, how does this affect your life? Like, you're at your kids', I don't know, something. You have to have your phone. You're with your wife at dinner. You have to have your phone. You're with your wife at night. You have to have your phone. And Adrian Wojnarowski, I think, made the point, like, this is a really hard way to live. How do you think about that? And like day to day, how does this being on call 24/7 affect you?
Well, it's a great question. And what I would say is I think there are a lot of people in a lot of lines of work that now have their phone, that people have access to them, whether it's a CEO, whether it's a salesman, whether it's whoever, where, by the way, you're in the fancy community, you're at dinner with your family, you get an alert that a star running back is out, right? Like, that impacts you, correct?
Sure.
So I just think that we're not all that different from a lot of people in this world. But I think what we do is so public. Like, think about this for a moment. Like, every time there's information that comes to us that's of the breaking variety, we're posting it. So just look at the number of tweets that I or other reporters might have. And I don't know, what is it, 5, 10, 15 a day, more during the season, more during free agency, more during the draft. So literally everything that we do in a professional world is kind of there for the public to see. So how many people live their lives where basically everything that they do for their job is posted socially?
Yeah.
And again, I think a lot of people have their lives interrupted. That's the power of having the phone in your hand. That's how life changes. I think a lot of people's lives are disrupted, interrupted, whatever you want to call it. But there is more attention on what we do because it's all so public.
Yeah.
So people are analyzing it from that standpoint. But it is true, and it is relentless, and it is part of the job. Like, there are certain times of the year that it's harder than others. There are certain times of the year, I said about it when Woj left. I said it on there, there are times where, I've taken a shower and I'm like positioning my phone so that if that text that I'm waiting on comes in, like, I could, get out of the shower and post that, this trade has happened, or this coach is fired, or this coach is hired, whatever it may be. I don't love that. Like when I'm getting in the shower, I'm like, I got to hurry this up because this is going to happen any moment now.
One thing about the NFL, where I feel like it didn't used to be like this when you started, but now it's literally 365 days a year where you have to do this, and you have the pressure, I'm sure, from ESPN and everyone else to be first on all this stuff: coaching cycle, free agency, the draft, you get into training camp, you get into the regular season. It just absolutely never ends. I would be mega burnt out. Do you feel burnt out at all, or even doing this so long, maybe you don't? I don't know.
Well, you know what? What's interesting about that is, I think I was on Pat McAfee recently, and he asked me, is this your busiest time of the year? And what I've come to realize is that every time of the year, it's the busiest time of the year, right? So when you're in the postseason, that's the busiest time of the year. And then when you're in the firing and hiring coaching, that's the busiest time until we get to the combine. And then that's the busiest time. And then free agency starts, and that's the busiest time. And then we go to the draft, and that's the busiest time. And then we start OTAs, and that's not as busy, but it's busy enough because there's nothing else going on. Here's the deal, right? The NFL, everybody has so much interest in it that if there's a big story in May in what should be, and what has been in the past, a really quiet time, that deal, that trade, that suspension, that arrest, that incident, that benching, whatever it may be, that becomes the biggest thing at that time because there's nothing else to talk about, and it's the NFL, and anything with the NFL automatically gets vaulted into this stature where it dominates all the shows and becomes a point of discussion on every show. So that's the biggest thing until training camp opens, and then that's the biggest thing, and then the season begins, and that's the biggest thing. So everything that happens is the biggest thing, and that's not always the greatest way to live your life, but that's the job. If you don't like it, don't do it. I love the job, but the job has become a relentless, overwhelming machine that never lets up. And the NFL loves to control the news cycle and has shifted the calendar to the point where it tries to control every single news period and have the NFL constantly be a source of conversation, even when it's not supposed to be a source of conversation. Like, we're in the middle of bye weeks between the conference championship games and the Super Bowl. I remember back in the day, back when I was a single guy in Denver and could go on a date and was allowed to do things, I remember when that was usually like a pretty quiet period. Now, let's get the Senior Bowl. Now let's get some more hirings. And now, like, a coordinator hire is a big deal. Now, when the Buccaneers deny permission to the assistant offensive line coach to Jacksonville, which is kind of funny, that's a big deal. Everything's the biggest deal.
Yeah. Well, and that's why they're worth $20-30 billion, because people just care so much about every little thing. All right. Don't have a ton of time left. I want to get to a few of the questions from the people. A few listener questions. Slim Charles wants to know, will the league ban the tush push? Will the NFL ban the tush push?
I know people have brought that up. I've never heard any momentum for it to be pushed. It's a play. Everybody can use the play. You can do it. Your team can do it. And if, that's like saying, okay, well, Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill were so dangerous on the long ball. Like, we're going to ban that play because nobody else can do it the way they can. Well, like, you know what? Go draft an offensive line that can run the tush push. Go draft a quarterback that can run. I don't hear any movement to ban the tush push.
Okay. From Kyle, he says, besides money, is there any good reason for the NFL to add another meaningless regular season game? I love football, but it gets fatiguing towards the end of the year. Seems like eventually more games could dilute the product like NBA. And there's been a lot of talk. I assume they're going to an 18-game schedule very soon. I assume it's money, but yeah, why? Or do you think it's good or bad for the NFL to go to more games?
Well, again, I will say that in part of the cycle that we're talking about where it never lets up, again, it used to be that Sunday always felt like a big deal, right? Like, it was game day. And now it's like there's Sunday and here's Monday. And now you're catching and it's like Thursday and the week is on and it never lets up. And the 18-game schedule, it's coming. It's coming. Whether you like it or not, it's coming. And it's going to be here. And it's always about money with the league. And there's going to be more money involved. And they'll scale back the preseason games. And there'll be TV packages on the 18 game, on the extra game that the players can have. And again, I think it'll be presented to the players like this, Adam. Would you rather have 17 games and 1 bye week, or 18 games and 2 bye weeks and more money? I mean, when you look at it like that, it becomes a very simple. I'll take the 18-2 and more money. Thank you.
Yeah.
Check, please.
And we're going to be playing the Super Bowl in March. I mean, if they try to institute this, right, we're going to be playing the Super Bowl.
No, President's Day. It'll be President's Day every single week.
Yeah.
So that I don't know that you can make the Super Bowl any bigger, but now it comes on a Sunday night where Monday's a holiday anyway, and everybody could watch the Super Bowl all night. And Philadelphia, they could climb the light poles, and Kansas City, they could do whatever they're doing and party all night long, and nobody has to go to work on Monday anyway. Again, everything. That's the theme of this whole thing, right? Everything has become bigger and more magnified. And that's the way the league likes it, because there's more money involved in everything. There's a reason that these franchises are going for over $6 billion now.
Yes, we need to buy one. We need to win the lottery and buy one. Actually, we need to win the lottery multiple times, but yes, I'd love to own one.
You'd have to win a lot. You'd have to hit on a lot of DFS rosters to be able to buy it.
Yes, a lot. Okay. Last question from Juan. He says, does Adam believe there will be an NFL team internationally in the near future? Do you think there will be a team outside of the United States in the near future?
In the near future, no. Eventually, I think we've seen the league grows to everything possible, but there's going to be more international games every year, right? That's going to be a part of this 18-game season. You're going to see more international. What were there, 5 this past year? Yeah. And I don't know what they're slated for in 2025 next season, but I think it's going to be more. And if it's not more, there are more coming, okay? Minimum of 10 to 12 international games once the 18-game schedule comes in. I could see it being a point where every team that has the added 18th game, that becomes an international game for teams where everybody's playing one game internationally. I could totally see that happening.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay. Before we get out of here, want to talk about the situation in our country with type 1 diabetes. I know it is an important cause to Adam. It's affected your family. I've been on a crazy health kick lately, doing a lot of screening and stuff like that. A lot of listeners I know are as well. What can you tell the people about type 1 diabetes?
I just had to respond to somebody. Basically, my wife is a type 1 diabetic, and I've seen what it's like for her to manage that disease and that condition. And I have so much respect and admiration and love for what she does. And so to me, it's why I've partnered with Sanofi to raise awareness about the importance of screening for type 1 diabetes, because I think it's really important for people to do that. I make my living off information. I want people to get the information, right? So you just go to your doctor. Type 1 diabetes can't be prevented, but it can be screened early. So screening gives people a valuable piece of time to get ready for that. And that's what we want people to talk to their doctor about it and tell them that they want to be screened. Go to screen4type1.com for more information. That's screen4type1.com. Again, that's my partner with Sanofi. Felt like it's an important cause with watching what my wife and others go through. Again, didn't know much about type 1 diabetes, didn't know much about diabetes at all. And I'm learning all the time. And of course, I've now been married to my wife for
don't forget,
almost 18 years. And I think about how much I've learned about the disease and condition and how far they've come. But to get screened for it in advance, it's a no-brainer, and highly recommend that for people. Screen4type1.com.
Yeah, we'll be sure to get that link into the show notes so anybody can check that out that wants to. It just strikes me with all this stuff, the more I've learned about health, there's such little downside to screening. And some people will say that there is, the doctor, blah, blah, money, but getting screened, there's not a lot of downside. So if people, I just want to get screened for everything. I told my doctor, don't ask questions, screen me for everything that you possibly have. So yeah, I'm in for sure. All right. Appreciate the time, Adam. It is ridiculous. But if you are not following Adam Schefter on Twitter, you are obviously missing out on the fastest and best information that all of us need to know at Adam Schefter. Of course, what are your Super Bowl plans? Are you going to New Orleans? Are you going to be there for the game?
Yeah, this is a different kind of trip in the sense that I'm taking my wife and daughter, neither one of which has been to New Orleans, on Sunday. I don't know when this pod's running, so we're taping this Friday.
Mm-hmm.
We're going Sunday. My daughter is doing media night for Nickelodeon for her show Slime Time on Wednesday nights, 7:30 Eastern. So she will do media night. I'm going to kind of support her and watch, which again is more thrilling than any assignment that I go on Super Bowl week.
Yeah.
My wife will be there. She's never been to New Orleans. They'll fly home Tuesday morning. I will stay on for the duration during the week, and then Friday night, my son and daughter will come back to New Orleans together, and my daughter will do post game for Slime Time, of which I don't have any post game responsibility, so I will be there to support her again, and then all of us will fly home on Monday morning back to our house.
All right, that sounds great. Well, enjoy the trip. For Adam, for everyone behind the scenes at ESPN, everyone behind the scenes at ETR, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.